Hello, Virgo. I have been doing this for a long time, reading energy, sitting with the patterns that emerge when I look at someone's situation with the full attention of someone who does this work seriously and with genuine care for the person receiving the message. And in all of that time, something showed up in your reading today that I have not encountered in this form before now. I want to be careful about how I say this because I do not want it to sound dramatic for the sake of drama or like the kind of theatrical opening that is designed to create urgency without real content behind it. What I am about to say is not that what I saw when I sat with your energy today was the specific and unmistakable signature of someone who has been profoundly underestimated. Not casually, not in the ordinary way. That people are sometimes underestimated by people who do not know them well or who have not had the chance to see the full dimension of what they carry profoundly, systematically, by people who should have known better and who are now, in the most complete and undeniable form, finding out that they were wrong. Welcome. And I mean that more than I usually mean it, because what I am about to say is something you have needed to hear for longer than I know, and longer than you may have admitted, even to yourself. Let me start with what I saw. That was different because I think you deserve the specific description rather than only the general claim that something unusual appeared. When I looked at your energy, I saw a pattern that is relatively rare. The pattern of someone who has been consistently operating at a higher level than the level they have been assigned by the people and circumstances around them for an extended period of time. Not slightly higher, significantly higher, in a way that would be immediately visible to anyone who looked at the full picture of what you carry and what you have been given access to, and compared the two without the softening lens of what is familiar or comfortable, or what the people assigning the levels have decided fits within their expectations of what someone like you can or should be capable of. The gap between those two things, your actual level and the level you have been operating at, under the constraints of the underestimation, is what I saw. And it is what I have never seen in quite this form. This pronounced in a reading before. I want to describe what that gap looks like so you can recognize it in your own experience of your own life, because I think you have felt it without always having the language for it or the external validation that would have made it easier to trust what you were feeling as an accurate perception rather than as arrogance or delusion or the self-serving belief of someone who wants to be more than they are, rather than someone who actually is more than the environment they have been placed in, has been able to recognize the gap feels like frustration, a specific frustration that is different from the frustration of something going wrong, or or from the frustration of wanting something and not having access to it. This frustration is the frustration of capability, constrained, of knowing what you can do and not being given the space to do it in the full form that you are capable of, because the space available to you has been defined by people who did not fully understand what you are capable of filling. The gap also feels like a particular kind of loneliness, not the loneliness of isolation, but the loneliness of someone who is in a room full of people and is still operating at a level that the room cannot fully meet or recognize or create genuine connection around, because the level they are operating at is above what the room was designed for and above what most of the people in it were capable of meeting without knowing that was what was happening. You have spent time in rooms like that, more time than was fair, more time than someone with your particular gifts should have had to spend in spaces that were too small for them and that did not know they were too small, because the person being constrained was accommodating the constraint with the particular grace and adaptability that is itself one of the more extraordinary things about you that the rooms consistently missed while benefiting from it. I want to speak now about who specifically underestimated you, because I think naming the categories, even if not the specific people, will help you understand the full scope of what the underestimation has looked like in your life and why it produced what it produced. In terms of the gap I described between where you are and where you should be, given what you actually carry, the first category is the people closest to you, the people who had the most access to who you are, and who therefore had the most potential to see you clearly, and who paradoxically often see us least clearly, because familiarity produces a kind of blindness that prevents the full and fresh seeing of someone who is encountered for the first time. Without the accumulated assumptions that familiarity builds, over time, the people closest to you assigned you to a category early based on who you were in the version of yourself available to them at the time the assignment was made. And they updated that category slowly, if at all, as you became more than the version they had assigned you to. Because people do not easily revise the categories they have assigned to the people they know well, even when the person in the category has long since outgrown it. The second category is the people in positions of authority or evaluation over various dimensions of your life, who had the power to expand your access to the spaces and opportunities that were appropriate to what you actually carry, and who did not, because they were assessing based on the visible presentation of what you were showing in the contexts available to them, which were not always the contexts that would have made what you carry most visible. They missed something, not from malice, from the particular limitation of people who have a framework for recognizing a certain kind of excellence and who cannot always recognize the kind that falls outside the framework, even when it is more significant than what the framework was designed to recognize. Your particular kind of excellence has frequently fallen outside the framework of the people who were in positions to recognize and reward it. And that is not a reflection of its value, only of the limitations of their frameworks. And the third category is perhaps the most painful one, and the one that has had the most lasting effect on the gap I described between where you are and where you would be if the underestimation had not shaped how you came to understand yourself and what you believed you were capable of and deserving of. The third category is you, the specific and cumulative effect of being consistently underestimated by the people around you on how you eventually came to estimate yourself. Because underestimation, when it is sustained and comes from multiple directions over a significant period of time, has a way of seeping into the internal conversation of the person being underestimated in the form of a question that they begin to ask without always knowing where the question came from. The question is, what if they are right? And that question quietly, over time, shaped some of the choices you made and some of the things you did not attempt and some of the spaces you did not enter, because the question had reduced your sense of whether entering would be appropriate or welcome or within the range of what was available to someone at your level, which was the level they assigned rather than the level you actually occupy. The question is, what if they are right? And that question quietly, over time, shaped some of the choices you made and some of the things you did not attempt and some of the spaces you did not enter, because the question had reduced your sense of whether entering would be appropriate or welcome or within the range of what was available to someone at your level, which was the level they assigned rather than the level you actually occupy. I want to be very specific about this because I think it is the part of the underestimation that is least visible and most damaging. Not what others thought of you, but what their thinking eventually produced in what you thought of yourself. Every time you held yourself back from something that was actually within your reach, because the question had made it feel out of reach. Every time you settled for something smaller than what you were capable of inhabiting, because the assigned level had become the felt ceiling. Every time you dismissed your own knowing because a more authoritative voice had contradicted it, and the question suggested that the more authoritative voice might be correct, all of those moments were the underestimation working, not from the outside anymore, from the inside. which is where sustained underestimation eventually relocates when it has been present long enough to be internalized as the voice of something other than other people's limitations, as the voice of something that might be true. It was never true. It was their limitation, relocated into your interior without your permission and without your awareness that that is what was happening. I want to say that as directly and as clearly as I possibly can, without the softening of qualifiers or the hedge of perhaps, or the careful acknowledgement that some forms of self-assessment require calibration before they can be trusted. They were not right. The assignment was incorrect. The category was too small. The framework was insufficient. And what they missed in not seeing you fully was not a small thing. It was the central thing that would have changed how they assessed everything else. If they had been able to see it, they could not, and that is their limitation, not yours. Oh, I want to speak now about what is happening right now in the lives of the people who underestimated you, because that is the other part of the never happened before that I saw in your reading, and that I want to describe. So you have the full picture. They are finding out in whatever specific form the finding out is taking in their particular situations, that the assessment they made of you was not accurate, and that the decision to underestimate you has cost something, that they are only now beginning to understand the full price of. This is happening simultaneously across multiple people and circumstances that were all underestimating you in their various ways, and that are all arriving at the same juncture of finding out they were wrong at the same time, which is the thing I have not seen before in this concentrated and simultaneous form. The reckoning is collective, and it is arriving for all of them in this season, while you are simultaneously arriving at a clearer understanding of what you actually are and what you were always capable of, and what becomes available when the underestimation no longer has the same hold over how you see yourself and what you attempt. I want to give you something practical to carry forward from this message, because understanding that you were underestimated is useful, but only if it produces something actionable, rather than only the vindication of having it confirmed, which is a real and legitimate feeling, but not sufficient on its own to change what the underestimation has produced in your own internal landscape over the time it has been present. The first thing, update your own estimate of yourself, not as a project of affirmation or the deliberate effort to think differently about yourself because you have been told to, but as the natural consequence of the information this message is giving you, which is that the framework you have been using to assess yourself has been contaminated by the underestimation of the people around you and needs to be recalibrated. against your actual capabilities rather than against the level they assigned you. Recalibrate in whatever specific areas of your life the underestimation has most affected. Your sense of what is available to you or appropriate for you, or within the range of what you can reasonably expect from the world around you. The second thing, enter the spaces that you have been avoiding because the underestimation had made them feel like they were not meant for someone at your level when they are actually exactly appropriate for someone at your actual level, which is higher than the level you were assigned. Not all of them at once, not in the dramatic and all at once form of someone who has just been told that they were wrong about themselves and who tries to correct for the wrongness in a single and overcorrecting move, but one space at a time, in the specific area where the absence of your presence has been most costly to the version of your life that would have existed if the underestimation had never taken hold. Enter that space first as an act of reclamation of something that was always meant for you, that the underestimation was keeping you from claiming. Whew. And the third thing, let the finding out of the people who underestimated you do its work without your assistance, without your effort to make it happen more quickly or more visibly or in a way that is specifically satisfying, in the form of their acknowledgement of the error, arriving with the weight of full recognition of what they missed and what it cost for both of you. The finding out is happening on its own schedule, which is the right schedule for what it needs to produce in them and in the situations around you and in the space between where you are now and where the correction of the underestimation is taking you in the coming season. Your work is not the finding out. Your work is the reclaiming of the estimation of yourself that the underestimation displaced, and the entering of the spaces that are actually appropriate for you now that the framework has been recalibrated against your actual level rather than the level you were assigned. I want to say something else about the reclaiming because it is the most important work of this entire season, and it deserves more than a single mention. The reclaiming is not a single event. It is a practice, the specific daily practice of noticing when the assigned level is operating in you as a felt ceiling and choosing instead to operate from the actual level that the message I have been delivering is describing. It will feel strange at first. The actual level will feel too large. In the same way that a space you have never inhabited before always feels slightly foreign before it becomes familiar, before the body and the mind adjust to the dimensions of the new space and begin to feel at home. Rather than merely visiting, let it feel strange while you keep inhabiting it, because the strangeness is not a signal that you are in the wrong space. It is a signal that the space is new and that the newness has not yet worn into familiarity, which is the only way familiarity arrives, through the sustained inhabiting of something until it becomes home. In this specific form of someone being underestimated this profoundly across this many dimensions, and the underestimation arriving at its reckoning for so many of the people involved simultaneously, while the person who was underestimated is in the specific moment of receiving the information that was always going to be available to them. Eventually, when the conditions were right for the full picture to become visible from both sides, the conditions are right now. The picture is available, and what it shows is someone who was always more than the estimation placed on them by people who did not have the full picture or the full framework to see what they were actually looking at. Now you know. In the most specific and direct form that this kind of work can offer, they were wrong. You were always exactly what you suspected you were. In the quiet moments, when the question, what if they are right, had not yet arrived to complicate the knowing, trust that version, the one that existed before the question. It was the accurate one. All along